Hello again, it's Pastor Brian Anderson from the Bridge Church in Rancho Cordova, California, and we're continuing our series on how to study the Bible. And I told you at the beginning there are four main stages that you would work through as you're studying a passage. The first one is orientation, and then observation. The third one is interpretation, and the final one is application. And we have worked our way through the first two. Orientation. Orientation is where you orient yourself to the big picture of the book that you're studying from. Say, for example, you're in Ephesians 2 and you're studying verses 8 through 10. Well, the book you're studying is the book of Ephesians. So you need to learn the answers to questions like, who wrote this book? Who is he writing to? Why did he write it? What's the main theme of this particular book? Where was the author when he was writing it? And where were the people who were reading it? Just general, big orientation questions. The second thing is observation, and we've been doing that quite a bit. We've been taking texts apart and observing everything we can about that text, connecting words, time words, place words, the function of different words in a sentence. We're connecting repeating words and showing how they keep repeating throughout a section. So all of that's really important. And observation to me is really fun. That's where you really begin to see what the Lord has designed for this particular passage. We're going to go further today and get into interpretation. So interpretation is the third big stage that you'll be working through as you're working on a passage. And this is the step where the interpreter asks general meaning questions. So at this point, you're probably going to have to go outside the text to get the answers to a number of your questions. And the meaning of texts will ultimately be determined by what has actually been observed. So it goes back to your observation stage. If you've been very thorough and complete as you have observed that text, is going to help you when it comes to coming up with the meaning of that passage. So what does this passage mean by what it says is the question that you want to be asking at this point. Before you can get the application, you need to get the interpretation. There may be many different applications of a passage, but there's going to be one correct biblical interpretation. So as you get started on this, you should ask yourself this: what do these words mean in English? Let's say you're working on Ephesians 2:8. For by grace you have been saved through faith. All right. The word grace, what does that mean in English? The word faith, what does that word mean? The word saved, what does that word mean? So just consult an English dictionary if you're not familiar with a certain word like propitiation. Get out your dictionary or go online to Google, find out what the word means. The second thing you should do is find out what the words mean in their original Greek form, which is what the New Testament was written in. And a really easy way of doing this is to go to blueletterbible.org, type in a verse at the top that you want to study, hit search. When it comes up to the left, you're going to see a little box that says Tools. Hover over that until you see the word interlinear. Click on interlinear, and it's going to open up for you every English word, and it's going to show you the original Greek or Hebrew, if you're in the Old Testament, the original Greek word from which that English word came, and you can click on another button and it'll show you a definition of that particular Greek word. And you can also find out every single place where that word occurs in the Bible. So if you want to do a word study on a particular Greek or Hebrew word, it's all there for you. Just takes your time and your interest. So find out what the words mean in English, and then if it's a particularly important word, go back and find out what it meant in the original Greek in which it was written. There might be a subtle difference between the English and that Greek word. Find out how the same author uses particular words in other places of their writings. Let's say you are in John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Well, John wrote the book of John, of course, and he's talking about the Word. So when you get to the book of Revelation, chapter 19, and you find the Word again, you can go back to John 1:1 and find out how the same author used that particular word, logos in the Greek, how he used it in John 1:1, and now compare it to what he's doing with it in Revelation chapter 19. And then let me give you this one, and this will be the final one we'll talk about today. Examine the context of the passage. And if there's something that I want to emphasize more than anything else when it comes to biblical interpretation, is context. Context is king. There's an old saying that goes, context determines the meaning of words and sentences. And there's an old adage, a text without a context is a pretext for error. So if there's one thing that will help you more than anything else, it's very simple. Just read what came before and what comes after the passage you're studying, and see how the passage you're studying relates to what came before and what's going to come after. If you rip a passage of scripture out of its context and just look at it without seeing what came around it, its surrounding verses, you're going to come up with error. You're going to come up with an incorrect biblical interpretation. We've already seen that when we did the video on Matthew 18, 15 to 20. Many people rip verses 19 and 20 out of their context and come up with a meaning that is wholly alien to the intention of Matthew when his book was written. So context. It would be great for you to go back and look at some of the other videos we've done. Ephesians 2, 1 to 3, Ephesians 2, 4 and 5, Ephesians 2, 6 and 7, Ephesians 2, 8 and 9, Matthew 18, 15 to 20, Hebrews 12, verses 1 and 2. Go through those videos and notice how we're looking for context. We're trying to determine the meaning of this particular section by finding its relationship to the overall context of what came before it and what came after it. So I hope that helps. We'll get into more in our next video, but God bless you.